I have filled so many journals over the years, so if you want to start an art journaling habit, I'm going to share what I've learned along the way to make it a regular practice. With just a few supplies, art journaling is such a wonderful way to express yourself creatively, to document memories, or even practice different techniques. So in this video, I'm going to share 4 tips that have helped me to keep a journaling habit, and you can apply this to any type of creative journaling that you might be doing. So the first one is consistency is key. So when you think of a journaling habit, you might be thinking of a daily practice, so showing up at the same time every single day. But as you probably know, building a habit is never easy, but it's important to remember that consistency is key, and consistency doesn't have to be every day, it just has to be consistent. So in his book Atomic Habits, James Clear explains that all big things come from small beginnings. The seed of every habit is a single tiny decision, but as that decision is repeated, a habit sprouts and grows stronger. Roots entrench themselves and branches grow. The task of breaking a bad habit is like uprooting powerful oak within us, and the task of building a good habit is cultivating a delicate flower one day at a time. I think that's such a beautiful way of thinking about how we can grow our journaling habit, and in order to make it a regular practice in your life, it is important to set time aside for it, and that means making it a priority. But I know life can get busy, so I wanted to share some ways that you might be able to do that. So the first one is to schedule a specific time for art journaling each day or every week. So whatever works for you. You might find you're most creative in the morning or in the evening, so choose a time that works best for you. Then you'll want to start small. So when you're starting any new habit, not just journaling, it's important to start small and build yourself up gradually. So don't sit down and think, right, I'm going to create 10 different art journal spreads and I'm going to sit here for 3 hours working on it. Start off easy by going for 5 or 10 minutes a couple of times a week and see what's working best for you. So rather than trying to complete a full art journal page all in one sitting, break the process down into smaller, more manageable steps. So you might set a goal to spend 20 minutes a day, for example, working in your journal or completing one small section of the page like throughout the week, and by the end of the week you have your finished journal page. Setting these goals can help you have that feeling of accomplishment and be more likely then to keep at the art journaling practice. You could also find a dedicated space for your art journaling supplies. Even if you don't have like a huge amount of room, just having a box that you can bring to like your dining table for a space to work specifically on your journal can really help you to sort of get in that creative mindset more easily and make it feel like more of a regular practice. And lastly, you could always use prompts to inspire you. So if you're feeling like your barrier to showing up consistently is that you're feeling stuck and you don't have any inspiration when you show up to do your journaling, then you could try using prompts to help get your sort of creative juices flowing. There's so many different challenges online where you can do daily prompts or ways to just help you get started. Like, you don't have to follow along with them all, it's just something to get the ball rolling. The second tip I have for you is to not let perfect be the enemy of good. So, of course, I had to talk about perfectionism when it came to starting a habit like this, because I think that's probably one of the most common barriers, is that we feel like, if I can't make something absolutely perfect, then I'm not going to make it at all. But the journaling journey is not a destination. It's all about enjoying the process. So please don't get discouraged if your pages maybe don't turn out the way that you want them to, or the way that you saw them in your head, or if you miss a day or two when it comes to building up your habit. So if you do it for like 5 days in a row, for example, and then you skip a couple of days and then you think, oh, well, I've not kept up with the habit, so I'm just going to not bother. You can jump straight back in, obviously. There's no like journaling police that are going to check that you've been doing it for a specific amount of time, or if you've missed a day. Developing a habit does take time, and art journaling is no exception. So it can be helpful to remind yourself why you wanted to start this art journaling habit in the first place. Was it to document a trip that you went on? Was it to experiment with different art supplies and techniques? Reminding yourself of why you wanted to start this habit in the first place can help you to stay motivated and give you a bit of purpose when you're showing up to your journal each day, especially on those days when you don't really feel like it. And sometimes actually I find that when I push past that feeling and go, okay, I don't really want to do this today, but I've made that promise to myself, or I've told myself that I want to continue to show up, I actually find that once I get over that initial hurdle of getting started, it becomes a lot easier then, and I've got out all my supplies and it kind of snowballs then. And then sometimes I actually can't pull myself away from whatever I am creating. So in those cases, I find it helpful just to have maybe like a little box of supplies that I don't have to, go searching around different things to think, right, what do I want to create with? Remove all those decisions. So maybe you've got your prompt, you've got your materials, they're ready, and just see what you can create. So not going into it thinking, right, I really want to make a masterpiece and everything's got to be perfect. And instead seeing even your mistakes, quote unquote, or the things that you do as play, as practice, as opportunities to learn and just develop your skills, because nobody is absolutely amazing at everything on their first attempt. So especially if you have never really done a lot of journaling before, it does take practice. That's all I have to say when people ask me for tips. It all really does boil down to practice. And in order to practice, you kind of have to get rid of that idea of perfection and not let that get in the way of just showing up and creating and continuing to push forward. So the third tip I have for you is actually to share your work, but don't compare. So sharing your art journaling creations with others, I find, is a great way to stay motivated and accountable. So whether you choose to share individual pages or your whole journal, or whether it's works in progress or finished pieces, sharing can be quite a vulnerable experience, and it can be scary to put yourself out there for others to see. However, the art journaling community I found is super supportive and encouraging, and it's really nice to connect with people who get it when it comes to this kind of hobby, especially with the papers and the paints. And it's just such a wonderful experience I found over the years. Sharing your work, you can inspire others, you can get inspired by the different work that you see. I love seeing what other people are creating. You can get valuable feedback that can help you to grow. Maybe you see a new technique that you want to try. Seeing the creative processes and finished products of other people can be really motivating and help you to keep pushing yourself to try new things. But of course, don't compare yourself to other people's artwork. Maybe they've been journaling for a lot longer than you have and they have that practice and that experience. But it can be a really good way to find inspiration. But don't forget to create rather than just consuming all of the inspiration that you see. So try to make notes maybe of the things that you like when you see other people's work that they're sharing, and think about how you can incorporate bits and pieces of that into the spreads that you create in your journal, and use that as a way to keep motivated and to stay curious and inquisitive, I think, with the different things that you can bring to your journaling. So if you're maybe feeling like a little bit stagnant and you're thinking, oh, I keep like showing up and making the same thing, maybe there's different techniques that you'll be able to find that other people are doing that might help to, give you your new favorite way of making a background, for example, or to add a quote to a page. There's lots of different things that I think we can learn from each other when it comes to this type of hobby. So I definitely recommend, if you feel comfortable sharing your work, but don't forget to not compare yourself to other people. And my fourth tip for you, which is kind of related to this, is don't be afraid to try new things. There's so many different ways that we can expand our art journaling practice, beyond drawing and painting. You can experiment with different formats and techniques, the size of your journal, the way that you're adding things to your work, your textures, the materials that you're using. There's so many materials out there. I know it can feel a little bit overwhelming, but trying new things is such an exciting part of art journaling in particular. So don't be afraid to push yourself out of your comfort zone, maybe adding new layers or different things to your pages, and you might be surprised at what you're capable of creating, and you might discover your new favorite technique. So one way that I find is actually really helpful for this is to look back on older entries that you've done and reflect on the things that you've learned, and to see your progress as well and how you have developed by building this habit. So I hope you found these tips helpful, and if you're ready to dive straight in and start journaling, then I definitely recommend checking out my beginners playlist called the Journaling Workshop. It's filled with lots of different techniques and tips and ideas for you to start creating your own art journaling pages.